Oh, hey, there you are. This video is going to be. That's a terrible intro. This video is going to cover FreeRADIUS on an Ubuntu server, and I don't have a clean install of Ubuntu server on this computer. So I'm going to cover that as well. Feel free to skip that if you have no interest in doing this in VMware Fusion. Then if you don't, then it's going to be totally pointless to watch it if you have no intentions on using VMware Fusion. But I have to do the install anyway, so I thought it'd be a good idea to go ahead and record that as well, and kind of show anyone that might be interested in that how to do it, because for testing and learning purposes, VMware Fusion or VirtualBox is a free one. You don't have to use VMware Fusion. VirtualBox, any type of virtualization technology or hypervisor like that can come in very handy, not just in the data center or in the server room, on the servers in the rack. VMware Fusion and products like that can come in super handy for either being on the road and needing to test something, or being at home and you don't want to have to worry about VPNing into the enterprise environment, and relying on a Wi-Fi connection to get in all the time. You may be traveling, you might be on holiday, and you might go to the beach, and you may not have the greatest Wi-Fi, but you really want to be in the sun, in the sand, and configuring a FreeRADIUS server. Hey, who knows? So we're going to go ahead and get started. I've already downloaded the Ubuntu server ISO. Google where to download the ISO from. You get it straight from Ubuntu. It's free. And you can see I have it right here. So there's my Ubuntu server ISO. Here's a virtual machine that I've already installed. This has some other things configured on it already. So in VMware Fusion, what you do is you say add a new VMware installation, and we'll say create a custom virtual machine, and it's Ubuntu 64. It's already chosen for us. That's kind of cool. Create a new virtual disk, and then we want to customize these settings. Now, don't forget that for those of you that may not be the most advanced experts on hypervisors and virtualization, basically what's happening here is I'm going to be able to install a virtual machine on my MacBook Pro, and it's not going to touch any of my system. It's not going to overwrite any files. It's not going to destroy the bootloader. It's not going to change the partitions on the drive. What this is going to do is let me install Ubuntu server in its own little sandbox, and I can completely blow it away, and I can completely hose things up, and it's not going to destroy anything on my MacBook Pro. And by the way, when I say MacBook Pro, I'm talking about, I think this is a 2012 model with 8 gigs of RAM. So it's just probably the best laptop that I have to run this type of software on, because I've got a Surface Pro 4, but I didn't really want to load that up with a bunch of virtual machines. I thought this would be the best laptop that I had for it. And by the way, I'm not a huge like Apple, bandwagon fanboy type person. I really use both Windows and Mac, and actually Linux a lot too. So for me, it's the right tool for the right job, and don't let anyone tell you what to use. Use what you think is best, and use what works for you. So anyway, you can do customize settings here, and we'll call this the Ubuntu FreeRADIUS. Save, and now it's going to let me customize everything here. Okay, so what I wanted to do, why I chose customize instead of just save, is I want to assign my Ubuntu server ISO that's on the desktop. I want to assign that to the CD drive on the virtual machine. And I also want to change the hard disk size. I don't really need a 20 gig hard drive on a FreeRADIUS test server, so we can go ahead and shrink that down to, let's say 10 gigs. That should be plenty to do the operating system. And then we'll go back here and we'll say the CD drive, and mind you, this is the virtual CD drive, so you can do some pretty cool things. You can tie in the virtual machine to see your actual real CD drive or DVD drive on your computer, or you can just assign it to an image, like an ISO, and it'll actually, to the VM, think that that's the CD drive. So if we click on this, we can see, like, I don't actually have this ISO, this Ubuntu server ISO burned to a DVD. So I just have it stored on my desktop. So we'll come here and we'll say, choose a disk from the desktop, Ubuntu server, see it here, Ubuntu server 16042 server, AMD64 ISO. Open. And now, as far as the virtual machine is concerned, I actually have that DVD burned and in the drive. It won't know the difference. So, you can really play around with a lot of these other settings, and a lot of them are more for like desktops. That's where they would come in kind of handy, like with the sound card and USB and Bluetooth and printers and the camera access, blah blah blah. We're just going to be running Ubuntu server. There is no GUI, there is no desktop. It's just going to be all command line. One more thing is network adapter. I always choose the bridged network, because then what's going to happen if I do a bridged network connection is this virtual machine, when I get Ubuntu server installed on it, and its network card that it has is actually going to appear to my Wi-Fi network as its own network interface. It'll be its own NIC. It'll have a MAC address. It'll get an IP address on the same subnet as whatever my LAN is. And so the cool thing about that is other computers on my network, on my LAN, will also be able to communicate with this server. So it's kind of cool if you were to do something like a web server or DNS server or whatever, other devices on your LAN would be able to communicate with it. If you do the share with my Mac, I believe, and it might actually say right here, I believe what happens is the Mac or the host device is going to turn into sort of a firewall / router type setup, where your virtual machine is going to be on a totally different subnet, and it's going to be isolated by itself. And so you could set it up where other machines on your LAN can access it, but you would have to do some port forwarding and probably some other tricky things to get that communication to the virtual machine. So if we just do the bridged network, then you can see that it'll be 192.168.1.95 is the actual IP address of the machine right now. And it says the virtual machine appears as an additional computer on the physical Ethernet network Wi-Fi. Okay, so our Wi-Fi is the Ethernet network. Okay, so wow, I probably took way too long explaining that, but anyway, so let's go back to show all. We adjusted the hard disk, we did the DVD drive, we changed the network. If you want, you can come in here and you can change the processors, and actually, it doesn't look like you can change how many processors there are. You can just change the processor cores. Set this up the way you want it now before you do the install. At least with VMware ESX and VMware vSphere, they really recommend that you don't change how many processors, how many sockets, and how many cores. They really don't recommend that you change that after the operating system has been installed. It can cause some instability, and they may have improved that a little bit in the recent past. I'm not sure, but for good measure, go ahead and if you want a 2-core processor on this virtual machine, go ahead and set it now. This virtual machine, this server is going to do so little. 1 processor core is completely fine, and really 1 gig of RAM is probably overkill. Believe it or not, it does not take much. So we'll go back to show all. If you wanted to, you could come in here and say, don't connect the sound card, or actually, it looks like you can remove the sound card altogether, which makes sense. Printer, remove the printer port. We don't need all this stuff. We don't need the camera either. There's a lot of things we could go in here and turn off. But it's going to work. It's going to work fine without doing all that stuff anyway. So, okay, it looks like we've done enough here. We've wasted enough time configuring this. So now, as you can see, I have this window here, and this is my virtual machine. I'll go ahead and minimize this. And so, if we click the big play button, oh, there might be one more thing I need to do here. On the CD drive, I want it to be connected on startup. And that option may not be available on here. It might just know. In ESX, you have to tell it to connect on startup, but I don't see that option here. So hopefully it's smart enough to see the CD drive and boot off of it. So here we go. Yay. Okay, it worked. So you could see when the virtual machine powered on, it had its own splash screen, its own basically its own post, and so if we hadn't connected the CD drive, then it basically would have been a blank computer. It would have been like turning on a computer that has no hard drive, or a blank hard drive. It would have just sat there and said, no boot volume. What do you want from me? So what happened was it booted off the ISO, and so this is the Ubuntu installer, and this is a very, very easy install to do. Yes, install Ubuntu server. Make sure that you guys can see this. Yeah. Okay. So, English, United States, no, English, English. And by the way, if you want a different language, then just choose your language. By the way, see, it says to release your mouse, press Control Command. So right now I'm moving my mouse around. I'm touching the trackpad and nothing's happening. I'm locked into my virtual machine right now. So any keyboard inputs, any mouse inputs are only being, I have clicked into the virtual machine. So everything I do is going into that virtual machine. And to release my keyboard and mouse from the virtual machine, you just you do Control Command, and then you can see my mouse comes back, and now I can come over here and I can shake the window around and I can minimize it, and I can come over here and bring it back. All right, enough playing around. So host name, why not do something like radius? That makes sense, right? And why not for the username as well? And we'll do the super secure password. Don't encrypt the home directory. Yes, that's the correct time zone. Detecting hardware, blah, blah, blah. More, okay. Partitioning, use the entire disk. Yes. Yes. Okay, now one thing to remember, if you're, again, if this is something new to you, virtual machines and hypervisors, you might look at this and say, well, wait a second, partition the disks. I don't I don't want to repartition my hard drive and start changing the boot manager and everything else. Why would I want to do this? Don't worry about it. This virtual machine is, as far as it's concerned, it only has a 10 gig hard drive and it does not see anything else. It has a 10 gig blank, totally blank hard drive, and anything you do in this virtual machine is not going to affect your real drive. It's basically, let's say you have a 250 gig hard drive on your laptop and you set up a brand new virtual machine and you go and configure it and you say, okay, I want this virtual machine to have a 20 gig hard drive. Well, what that does is takes basically 20 gigs of space off of your hard drive, your 250 gig hard drive, and it sets it aside for the virtual machine. And the virtual machine does not see anything like your boot volume or your partition table. It doesn't see anything like that. So when you're in these installers, and in whether you're installing Windows or Linux or another version of Mac OS on the same machine, when you see things like, oh, all data is going to be erased or overwritten, are you sure you want to do this? It's fine in the virtual machine to go ahead and say yes. So we will go ahead and do that. Yes. Yes, that looks good. And so you can see here, it's giving you basically the overview of what the disk partitioner is going to do. And everything is default and everything is fine. So yes, we want to write the changes to the disks. And I don't know how many times we have to answer that, but yes, go ahead and do it. I imagine too many people probably got mad that they overwrote something and didn't read before they did it. That's just my guess. So you can see that the Ubuntu server install, this is considered the graphical version of the installer. Believe it or not, it's not all nice and fancy and polished and whatnot, but you can see it's still, it takes a little while to do the install. You can see these little, let's see, Control Command. You can see these little the little icons here that are black. They'll turn blue for activity. So this is the hard disk, and it's basically showing that it's reading and writing. It's kind of like the hard drive LED on a desktop. Same thing for the CD drive. Whenever it is reading from the ISO file, it'll show you that it's reading from the DVD drive, so it thinks. And so not the fastest in the world, but you have to think that the hardware that this virtual machine is running on is a MacBook Pro, which is running Mac OS. It's running all of the services in order to do that. It's capturing video and audio, and it's also running VMware Fusion. And VMware Fusion is running a virtual machine that is installing Ubuntu Server. So we'll go ahead and leave this blank. Oops, I have to click in. Continue. And so now it's retrieving packages from the server. And so anyway, yes, it's a little bit slower than it may be on, you know, on real hardware, non-virtualized hardware. But you have to put it in context that this is an older MacBook Pro with a certain amount of RAM, and that hardware is trying to do a lot of things other than install Ubuntu Server. It's doing a lot of other things. So install security updates automatically. Not that this VM's going to be around long enough probably to even get any updates. We'll do an open SSH server. For those of you that want to do the Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP server, or as it's commonly referred to, a LAMP server, the Ubuntu server installer has it basically built right into the installer here. You can just basically put the little asterisk in that box, and if you go continue now, it's going to install that for you. It's pretty phenomenal because it's basically a turnkey setup. It gets everything set up for you pretty much out of the box and ready for you to customize. Same goes for DNS and mail server, the Samba file server. It really does save you a lot of time if you know that you're going to be installing those anyway. I always do the open SSH server because I know that I'm going to be remoting into the box at some point, or this virtual machine at some point. That's just out of habit. You know, quite honestly, if this is a virtual machine, I'm probably going to be right here in it. But you know, you never know where I might be. I might be over on the couch somewhere and have my laptop, my other laptop, and I might want to you know, get into this server from the couch without getting up, and that's where this would come in handy. So the ultra laziness install will do that. Continue, and now it's going to download the other packages now that I've selected OpenSSH and whatever else. I can't remember if I left a LAMP on or not. It doesn't matter. And so it's going to do what it's going to do. And the crazy thing is you get kind of used to doing this, like on, you know, in the data center. You get used to doing it on, you know, these crazy fast servers with ridiculously fast storage and basically unlimited amounts of CPU and RAM resources. And so you see an install, after working on those types of machines, you see an install of Ubuntu Server taking this long, and you're kind of like, okay, yeah, this is a little ridiculous. But hey, it's not that bad. So there's actually a little bit more to the FreeRADIUS install that I want to cover. I want to do the not just the Ubuntu Server installation, but I want to do the FreeRADIUS installation after you get Ubuntu Server installed. And then I also want to show you how to configure FreeRADIUS to dynamically assign VLANs to a Wi-Fi controller or access points, and dynamically assign the VLAN to the clients that are connecting through those access points and those Wi-Fi controllers, so that you can have a user basically sign in with their credentials, and based on what group they're in, they will be assigned to a VLAN. This comes in super handy when you may have a secure network and then an ultra secure network, or you may have staff and faculty and students. There's a good example. So you may have, you know, 3 different types of groups there, and you may not want to have 3 different SSIDs. You may not want to say, oh, this is the staff wireless, this is the faculty wireless, and this is the student wireless. And so when someone pulls up their mobile device and they're going to connect to the Wi-Fi, they see, 4 different networks, one for faculty, one for staff, one for students, and one for guests. That's getting a little ridiculous. So why not combine the 3 and just call it Wi-Fi, company Wi-Fi, and let their credentials determine what VLAN they're assigned to. In ultra high security environments, you probably want to stay away from that. But in ultra high security environments, you probably won't be doing 802.1x authentication on Wi-Fi anyway. You're probably going to have that and a whole lot of other things, certificates and blah, blah, blah. So install the grub bootloader to the master boot record. Of course, yes, do it. And again, don't forget, this is installing the master boot record. This is installing grub to the master boot record on the hard drive on this virtual machine. It's not touching the real hard drive. Else we would have a problem. When I go to restart my computer, Mac OS probably would not act correctly. So, still going on the install here. Another swig of Mountain Dew. Okay. And specifically, the wireless and dynamic VLAN assignment that I want to show you specifically how to do that for HP, MSM 760, 765, 765ZL. They pretty much, those wireless controllers, whether you've got the standalone unit or the module that goes in the 5412 chassis, they're pretty much all the same interface, and so it shouldn't really matter that much whether you have a 760 or a 765 or a 765ZO. And this would probably apply to other models as well. Okay. So you can see that the virtual machine is up and running, and this is a clean install of Ubuntu. It has the SSH server installed, and it may or may not have the LAMP server installed. I can't remember, but we're not going to use that anyway, so it doesn't matter. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and log in. And it was Radius, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so that username and password is what was set up during the install. So remember your password when you're doing the install. Don't go, yakking to all your friends and your family, whoever's around, and put in some random BS password and then forget what it was. I have done that on more than 20 occasions, I'm sure. So anyway, let's see. First thing you want to do is do a sudo apt update. And it's going to ask for the password. And that's basically going out and it's updating the lists of everything. Okay, it can be upgraded. All right. So, actually, instead of doing sudo to every single one of these commands, you can just go ahead and do you can do su and oh, that's not going to work. Hold on. Sudo pass wd 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5. So basically what I did is when I tried to SU, the password isn't set up yet, so I had to do a sudo pass wd and then type in the password for SU. So now I should be able to actually SU into the root user. if any of you people are watching this and are not Linux people, then what I just said makes no sense to you at all. But anyway, so now you can see that my terminal, my console here has changed and now says root at radius. So I no longer have to, preface every command with sudo this and sudo that. I'm just doing that to be lazy. You should not do that. Don't do that, because as soon as you switch to root, you're going to accidentally remove something or delete something, and it'll be all my fault because I showed you that it's okay to just run everything as root. In this test environment, it's completely fine. So if this was a production server, I definitely would not be doing that. Anyway, let's not waste any more time on that. So I actually got this up and running, maybe a week or a couple weeks ago. And I jotted down some notes. And so I'm kind of just going to go over what I did to get FreeRADIUS installed and configured with LDAP and assigning VLANs dynamically to an MSM 765ZL. And the access points connected to the 765ZL are MSM 460s. They're not the latest and greatest, but they're 802.11n, and they're capable of data rates that are far beyond what our needs are. Not only that, quick note: we had some AC units. Not HP, but we had some AC units, and we're primarily at work. We're primarily an Apple house, and so there's tons and tons and tons of MacBooks and MacBook Pros and iPads and iPhones, and the entire main building was AC, and it was the biggest cluster in the world. Apple devices, and I don't know if it was just those AC units in particular, but the Apple devices just could not stay connected. And it was either because the Apple devices were doing something to the access points, like flooding them maybe with bonjour BS that maybe the access points didn't know how to handle, and so maybe it's the access point's fault. Maybe it's a combination of the access point and Apple. I don't know. All I know is that it did not work, and so disabling AC actually really helped relieve some of that. But even the 5 gigahertz spectrum just didn't seem usable, basically. So we knocked everyone to 2.4. That helped even more. But we decided, no, we really want to utilize the 5 gigahertz spectrum. And I know I'm going way off topic here, but we wanted to use the 5 gigahertz spectrum. We thought it was ridiculous that we had to go back to 2.4 and 2.4 only. So we decided to go a different route. And we have had absolute success with the 802.11n and 5 gigahertz. We're getting crazy awesome data rates out of the MSM 460s. So anyway, the first thing that we want to do, I believe, is go ahead and get FreeRADIUS installed, because FreeRADIUS and FreeRADIUS LDAP are not installed on Ubuntu server yet. They don't come pre-installed. So let's see, apt install FreeRADIUS. Oh, and I could have done FreeRADIUS LDAP all in the same command, but too late. We'll let this go. So it's downloading and installing FreeRADIUS, which we need. This is so slow. This is terrible. Okay. So apt. Now, by the way, if you hadn't run the su command and become root, then you would have needed to put sudo like this, sudo apt install FreeRADIUS. That's what you would have needed to do, but that's only so that you can elevate to root privileges, which I'm already root, so I don't need to do that. Because like I said, I'm kind of lazy with typing in sudo after every little, or before every little command. So the first one is install FreeRADIUS, and then the second one is install FreeRADIUS -LDAP. Feel free to combine those into one command if you want. It doesn't matter. All right. And so what the FreeRADIUS LDAP package does is basically add the support of authenticating against an LDAP server from FreeRADIUS, because it doesn't have that built in by default. Okay? Makes sense? All right. Okay. So on Ubuntu server, when you install the FreeRADIUS and the FreeRADIUS LDAP packages, the config files and basically the working directory for FreeRADIUS is going to be in etc FreeRADIUS. So we'll go ahead and cd over there. Another reason that I did su is because to view a lot of this stuff, like just to do an ls inside of the FreeRADIUS folder, it would have said, you know, you don't have permissions to do this. So every time you want to ls or you know, view the directory contents, you have to do sudo ls, you know, sudo nano, sudo whatever, and it really becomes annoying. So that's another reason that I did the su. So if you're not root and you go into etc FreeRADIUS and you type in ls and it doesn't show you anything and it says you don't have permissions to do this, you need to do sudo ls. So it'd be sudo ls, sudo space ls. Okay, so now that we're in the FreeRADIUS directory, there are going to be a few important files that we modify. And there are going to be several that we don't touch, thankfully, right? Because that's a lot of files that you see there. So it looks like the first thing I did is we updated the users file. That's always a fun one. So let's go over here. Make sure that you guys can see this. Yeah. So we'll do nano users. And so this is the users file. This is the users configuration file. And for those of you that don't know, in nano, you can do Control V and Control P, and those will advance you to the next page or the previous page. V is the next page and P is the previous page. That prevents you from doing a lot of arrow downs and just going da 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 da. You know, can you imagine how long if you had to go, you know, several thousands of lines down a config file and you were, oh, I'll get there eventually. Instead of doing that crap, just do Control P and Control V. I think it's Control. I know it's Control V, but well, anyway. I guess Control P is the previous line, but you can just hold that down. So let's see. It's Control Y. And it says it right here on the bottom right above next page. It says previous page Control Y. So let me just show you how to do that. Control V, It's going down to the next page every time I push it. And then Control Y is the previous page. That's amazing. I can't believe, I mean, you use this stuff like for years and years and years. And then you make a video showing how to use it, and it's like, wait a minute, I don't even know what the key is for the previous page. I'm an idiot. Okay, so let's go. Oh, if this video gets more than 5 views, I will be surprised. So I've for some reason floated all through this file over and over and over again, showing you the previous and next page. It's really not that complicated, I promise. Really all we need to do is come in here and we need to do some things. We need to add some things. Now if you look, all of these users and sections, they're all commented out. There's basically, I don't think I saw anything in here that's actually active. They all have a oh, here's one thing right here. Okay, so default frame protocol PPP, frame protocol PPP, frame compression, hint equals slip. Yeah, that doesn't matter. Okay, so just anywhere you feel like it, create a new space to work in, like I've done here. I've pressed enter a few times. So this is going to be where we're going to add some fun stuff. For the LDAP authentication, we need to define some things. And this is all in the documentation as well. If you want to go read about the users file, that's the great thing, is like everything that I'm doing, there's documentation out there. There are examples out there. I'm just making a video of this to show you how to put it all together, because it's a lot of information that's kind of spread out in a lot of different places, and some of it's outdated and some of it may not necessarily apply, or there might be some bad advice out there. Which this is probably bad advice if you want to be honest. Just kidding. This is great advice. So the LDAP line that we want to create here is going to allow FreeRADIUS to check users not in its own users file, where we're defining them one at a time and assigning a password one at a time. I mean, can you just imagine if you had to come into the FreeRADIUS users file and you had to add Sean and the auth type is accept and his password is blah, 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 blah. Can you just imagine what would happen if every time a password was updated or every time someone needed to be added or deleted, you had to come into the users file and actually change a manually defined user? That'd be impossible. It would just, no, it wouldn't happen. So that's what makes the capability of authenticating the LDAP and checking a group, that's what makes it so beautiful. So I'm going to stop rambling now. I'm actually going to get this typed in here. So what you do is you say default LDAP group equals CN equals Wi-Fi users. And I'm going to go ahead and get this typed in, and then I'm going to explain. All right, so this is the first line. And one thing that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to figure out where I have CN equals Wi-Fi users, comma, CN equals groups, comma, DC equals test, comma, DC equals com. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to find out your LDAP server's structure, how the directory and how that database is actually named and how it's structured. And how you can do that is, if you don't already know, you can get a you can download a free LDAP browser, and you can open the LDAP browser, connect to your LDAP server, and it will basically give you, if you have any experience with Active Directory, it's sort of like that, but on steroids. It gives you the full DN of every user and group. And anyway, you're going to have to figure out how your LDAP server is set up, because some LDAP servers may say OU equals groups, and it just depends on how your LDAP server is set up. So find out what that is, and if you need more information on that, I can always make a video on how to look at your LDAP server and figure that stuff out. But CN equals Wi-Fi users, that is simply going to be the group that you're assigning users to tell LDAP or to tell FreeRADIUS whether you want this user to be able to get into the Wi-Fi system or not. Because you may not want to let anyone that has an account in your LDAP server to get on Wi-Fi. You may say, no, out of 100 people that are in the LDAP server, out of 100 accounts, we only have 10 people that we want to give Wi-Fi access to. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create a security group, and we're going to put these 10 people that we want to have Wi-Fi access, we're going to put those people in a group called Wi-Fi users. Or you can call it whatever you want. You can say this is a group for super users, and therefore they get Wi-Fi access. It's whatever you want to label it. Just make sure you label it something that when you come back a year later, or someone else comes in to take your place, that it's something that makes sense. You probably want to have something to do with Wi-Fi or something to do with wireless or something in the group name that makes it very obvious that this is what this does. So, for example, in this LDAP server, I created a group called Wi-Fi users. And if you had staff that you wanted to have Wi-Fi, you might call it staff Wi-Fi. If you had students that you wanted to have Wi-Fi, you could call it students Wi-Fi, whatever group you want. All this is doing is basically letting FreeRADIUS check whether they're a member of the group or not. So once you get this line figured out, then you can move on to the next thing. And it's a little bit easier, I promise. So you do tunnel type equals 13. And see how this number sign is right here? Or is the popular thing to call it now is, see this hashtag? Oops. Tunnel type equals 13. So what I've done here is, you'll notice in the rest of the config file, there's all these number signs everywhere. That's commenting out everything past that. So everything after the number sign for the rest that's on that line is not going to be seen, basically, by FreeRADIUS. It's not going to pay attention to it. So as you can see, I've done tunnel type equals 13, and then I've sort of just made a little a comment here so that I can know that 13 is VLAN. Okay, and I'll explain that in just a second. So tunnel medium type is 6, and that stands for IEEE 802. And then tunnel private, whoops, group ID equals, this would be whatever the VLAN is. So let's just say 51. Put it in quotes. 51, and this is the VLAN number. Okay, so basically these 4 lines that I've added to this users group, that is how you tell FreeRADIUS to check credentials against an LDAP server, and then check if they're a member of this group, which we're calling Wi-Fi users. And if they are, then here's what we're going to send back to the access point or the Wi-Fi controller. We're going to basically say, yes, they are a member of Wi-Fi users. We accept, and so here's what we're going to give you in exchange. We're not just going to say, yep, he's good, or nope, he's not. We're going to say, yes, he's good, he's authenticated, he's a member of this group, and since he's a member of this group, these next 3 lines apply. Put in 13 for VLAN, we've put in 6 for IEEE 802, and then the tunnel private group ID is the actual VLAN number in quotes. So you will need to also know what VLAN you want to actually assign the clients to, because it has to be defined here. Now, that is it for the LDAP group portion. But what you can do is, like I said, what if you wanted one SSID, and depending on what group a person was a member of, you could assign them to a different VLAN. Well, here's how you do that. You basically just do another line here, but you have a different group. You just create another line and you say, okay, if they're not a member of Wi-Fi users, check to see if they're a member of another group. And another group could be, let's say it's student Wi-Fi access or student Wi-Fi, whatever you want to call the group. So if a student puts his username and password into the Wi-Fi SSID, he's not going to be a member of, let's call this staff Wi-Fi. He's not going to be a member of staff, and he's not going to be assigned VLAN 51 because we don't want a student going to VLAN 51. What's going to happen is he will be discovered to be a member of student Wi-Fi, and so then whatever we have for the access accept message here will apply to him. So we'll kind of do the same thing, equals 13. Tunnel medium type equals 6. For 802 being the medium type. And then here's the difference. Let's say that the student VLAN is 52. Well, what's going to happen is the student's going to authenticate, he'll be part of the student Wi-Fi group, and he will be assigned VLAN 52. Okay, so he'll be on a totally different network than someone that is a staff member. And so then you can see how you can keep going on and on with this, where you could have basically, you know, as many VLANs as you had, you could have different users authenticating to different groups and be assigned different VLANs. It's pretty cool, and you can start to see how you would almost have to go this route if you had several different groups of users that needed to go to several different VLANs, because it would get to a point, let's say you had 20 or 25 different groups and 20 or 25 different VLANs. There's no way that you're even going to be able to list that many SSIDs and broadcast that, around your entire building or your physical plant, whatever, and just tell the certain people, okay, now you connect to this SSID that says, whatever, and just keep scrolling through the massive lists of, SSIDs. Performance of the wireless network would just go to complete shambles. It just wouldn't be a good idea, and you've never seen that, I'm sure, because it's just not feasible. So this is the much cleaner, the much better approach to assigning VLANs dynamically. So this is just a portion of the user's file. And then one more thing we need to add is we have to add the reject. Without this line, you'll be in some serious trouble. Because what this last line does, this default auth type reject, what this does is basically say, if someone signs in, they type in their username and their password, and we check to see if they're a member of staff Wi-Fi, and they're not. And then we go down the list. We check to see if they're student Wi-Fi, if they're a member, and they're not. Well, without this line, what happens? Without this default auth type reject, what would happen? Well, they would still be authenticated, and they would go to whatever the default egress route would be on the access point. Not necessarily a good thing, unless we want to assign some sort of like temporary access or something. But the best thing to do is to include this line, default auth type reject. And that basically means that if someone signs in with credentials, and the credentials may be valid, they may actually have an account in the directory server, and they may actually be a member of some groups, and they may have access to some things, but when they get checked for staff Wi-Fi or student Wi-Fi, and neither of those are true, then denied. You cannot connect to this SSID at all. Try a different one, or go get some help, or maybe you got fired and you have no business being on the network anyway. So make sure you include the default auth type reject. Okay? I believe that is it for the users file. And, all the rest of this stuff, you just kind of leave, and most of it's commented out anyway. On no match, the user is denied access. That's commented out. Don't know why. But we did that up here anyway. So, yeah, that's it. If you wanted to, let's say you had a user that was not in LDAP, but you had like a test account that you always wanted to be there regardless of whether there was a connection to the LDAP server or not. That's when you could come in here and you could say, oh, Sean has, he's a user, okay? And so you could come in here and you could put the password, And then do the same thing. You can the tunnel type, tunnel medium type, tunnel private group ID. You can fill all that information out underneath the credentials for this user, and it would operate the exact same way as if this member were a group of an LDAP group. So you could say, you know, test user 1. Anyway, we won't get into that. But it's very, in my experience, it's pretty rare that you want to define someone in the actual user's file, except for testing purposes. So if you do Control X and hit yes, then that will save the file. Okay? And so now that that's saved, we can actually go back and look at it if we want to make sure it's saved, which it did, but see, there it is. So we've got all our stuff in there. The next thing we need to change, there's not too many more files, thankfully, that we need to change, is the EAP conf. Okay, and then I believe. Let me check this real quick. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, you would have timed out, wouldn't you? Just a moment. What is going on here? Oh, this is like the sign that it's time to go to bed. Yes, I'm connected. Ain't nobody got time for that. All right. Oh. I know what I'm doing. Wow. That is hilarious, you know? So I was trying to sign in to my Radius server virtual machine on my own network because I was using the same host name that I used at work, and I'm VPN'd into work. And so no wonder they have different passwords. So that's pretty hilarious. Feel free to laugh. That is hilarious. One day One day I will be a computer expert. I will be a master. That day is not today. All right. It's embarrassing. Oh man. I'm still just trying to even figure out how I was using a DNS name. I was using the host name. And so I was using Radius. And on my Surface Pro 4, if I go, even though I'm signed into the VPN, if I open a command prompt and do ping radius without the fully qualified domain name, if I just do ping radius, it comes back radius.home. So my access point, my router, whatever, is apparently adding the host names and making things accessible. Yay! Now we know. Did not think about that. Wow. All right, so anyway, let's get this show back where it's supposed to be. MS Chap v2. That's what you want to change your EAP type to, okay? You don't want to leave it MD5. You just don't. Don't ask why. I'm not going to tell you. It's MS Chap v2. And then we keep going down. And we keep going down. Let's do here. Comment out MD5, GTC, Control V. We want to say no to MD5 here. We do not need it. So we'll comment that out. Remember I said that these little hashtags, these little number signs, these little tic-tac-toe guys, anything after them on that line, the program doesn't see. It's not read. It's treated like a comment. Useless. So we'll add those little number signs there and basically comment out MD5 and the open and close brackets. And then do the same for LEAP. Don't need it. Unnecessary GTC. Also not needed. This is so much fun. It's almost like a game. You know? It's like a game. So we get down to TLS. Oh, man. We'll skip the certificates and self-signing and getting a certificate signing request. We'll skip that. That's a different day. That's a different video. I know there's a couple more things we need to change in here, and it's something to do with the tunnel type. We want to make sure that we can shoot back the access accept message with the VLAN information as well. And if we leave some things commented out that need to be enabled, then it won't work. So it doesn't look like anything else really is modified here. Like I said, the certificates will come back in a different video and explain how to do that. That's not a necessary thing to do right now. So okay, and then again for TTLS, we want to change the default EAP type to MS Chap v2. Copy request to tunnel. I believe we want to enable that, if I remember correctly. No, we leave that disabled. Wrong. See, it's a good thing you have notes. It's a good thing. Use tunneled reply, that is yes. We do want to do that. And then the virtual server is going to be inner tunnel, and then include length as commented out. And then I believe there's another section if we keep on going. We go right through the warning, stop, don't do this. We blow right through that crap. We don't care. PEAP, MS Chap v2, that is correct. And then copy request to tunnel, no, but we do want to do the tunneled reply. We say yes. And we uncomment out this, basically enabling it, until we say no, and now we are making a point to disable the proxy tunneled request as EAP. We do not want to do that. Don't ask any questions, just follow along. And just trust me, it'll be great. It'll be great. And then Control V to keep going. Send an error, that's fine. Okay, so we're done. That's the EAP.conf. That's what you change. And instead of going back over every little thing and telling you what I did and why I did it and making sure you do it all, I'm going to not do that. And I'm going to save this file. And if you need to go back and see what I changed, then the great thing is that this is being recorded, and you can just use the little slider tab and you can go back, 30 seconds or a minute, whatever. And the next thing here is the client's config file. Okay, so we do ls, we see clients.conf. So nano clients, be great if I could type, clients.config, not config, conf. And what this file does is it basically determines what devices are going to be able to make the requests to the FreeRADIUS server. And what by device, what I mean is either the wireless controller or the access point itself needs to be authorized to communicate with FreeRADIUS and send along the credentials and get a response and relay that back to the wireless client on whether they've been accepted or not. Okay? So I know that seems like we've already done that in the users file, but that's not true. The users file is actually setting up where those credentials are checked, what those credentials that are being sent are authenticated against, and what VLAN gets assigned, the group checking, blah, blah, blah. This is actually setting up the hardware to be able to communicate with FreeRADIUS. So what we'll do is we'll just make some space to work. And the client's config file is really very simple, actually. It's not complicated at all. So what we basically do for my setup, I have the MSM765ZL communicating to the FreeRADIUS. So no matter where the client, the wireless client is connecting to, no matter what access point it's connected to, the authentication comes from the Wi-Fi controller, which is just a local IP address. Let's say it's 10.10.10.10. Okay? So what you need to do in the clients.conf file is you need to basically set up FreeRADIUS to accept requests and authentications from 10.10.10.10. So all you do is you say client 10.10.10.10, and then we need to set up a password that we can go to the client and type in, so that we know that, yes, this client knows the password to get to FreeRADIUS. Okay? So secret equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Our favorite secure password. Okay? That's it. That's all you need for the clients.conf. Okay? Now, there are other situations where your Wi-Fi network may be set up to actually pass the connection, or make the connection from the access point directly to the FreeRADIUS server. Okay? And so in that circumstance, you would have to go in and just keep adding line after line after line, and creating a client and the associated IP address for every single access point on your network. Well, you can see why it's much better to actually just have the controller pass that to FreeRADIUS, because then you may have 1, you may have 2, you may have 3 Wi-Fi controllers, and that's all you have to do to get them set up is come into the clients.config file and add 1, 2, or 3 lines. If you had 50 or 100 access points and every single one of them needed to be added to FreeRADIUS, you would be doing a lot of typing, getting all those put in. You would have to know the IP address, and you would also have to set a secret up for those. And you could, I guess, make them all the same. That doesn't sound very secure to me. Or you could change them all, but then that's going to get really confusing. You'll have this massive list of passwords and this massive list of, access points and IP addresses, and which access point is assigned to which IP address, and which IP address has what password. It just doesn't make any sense. So if you can, just set it up to use the Wi-Fi controller and have the Wi-Fi controller communicate with FreeRADIUS directly. And so if your Wi-Fi controller is 10.10.10.10, this is all you have to do. And you can set this secret to whatever you want. Just make it not, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Please do something besides that. And don't just add a 9 to that. Make it something hard. Something that no one would guess. And so what you need to do is remember what that secret is, because when you go to add a radius profile to the Wi-Fi controller, you're going to need to know the IP address or the host name of the radius server, which in our case would be radius. You'll also need to know this secret password. There will be a field, maybe even 2 fields, to verify that you're typing the password incorrectly. And you have to put this secret in there, okay? And when you do that and save the profile, then your Wi-Fi controller can be set up to use that radius profile. And if you've got the right secret put in, and you've got in your clients.conf file, if you've got the right IP address put in on this side, then they will be able to talk to each other. Okay? So I probably made that way more complicated than I needed to, but that's all you do for the clients.config file. And yes, we will save it. Moving on. Oh man, we've got a little ways to go. So, the next thing is we need to turn caps lock off. That's one thing we need to do. We need to go to the modules directory, and if we take a look in there, you can see a few things inside of here. The one we're looking for, the config file we're going to edit, is the LDAP config file. Good old LDAP. Okay. So let's go down here. Okay. So this is where we get into defining the LDAP server, telling FreeRADIUS about the LDAP server that we want to talk to. Because remember, the LDAP server is, that's where all the usernames and passwords are. The usernames and passwords that we're trying to check are not stored on the FreeRADIUS server. Okay, the FreeRADIUS is just the proxy between the Wi-Fi controller, the access point, and then the wireless client, whether that be an iPad or an iPhone, whatever. The FreeRADIUS server is just the proxy between where the usernames and passwords are and the person trying to authenticate. Okay, so nothing is stored in the middle. This is just the go-between. So what this setup is basically doing is telling FreeRADIUS where to go look to check these usernames and passwords. And that's how we do it. We do it in this config file right here. And you can see server equals ldap.your.domain. Obviously, that is not correct. I really wish, I should have done. I got UCS downloaded, and I was thinking about setting up an LDAP server on another virtual machine, or maybe even this Ubuntu server, so that I could show you, I could show it to you actually working. But I think you probably get the general gist of what's going on here. Not only that, but if I did an LDAP install, this video would be like 8 hours long total. So let's not do that. Let's just do, I'll just show you if you had your LDAP server set up. Maybe I'll do a totally different video. That's probably a great idea, actually. Or maybe it's not a great idea. I don't know. Let me know if you want to see an LDAP server install, and we'll make it happen. But basically, once you get your LDAP server set up, whether it's Open LDAP or whatever, who cares, and you get your IP address, statically assigned IP address. Once you get your IP address of your LDAP server, which you probably already have. So let's just say that your LDAP server IP address is 10.10.10.15. Then you just put it in this line right here. And then you probably are not allowing anonymous binds. If you are, then, whatever. And the identity, let's just pretend cn equals admin, cn equals users, dc equals company, dc equals com. Okay? And for those of you that may not know what I'm doing when I say DC equals company, DC equals com, the way that this is broken down is where there's the dot in the domain name, you format it like this. Okay? So if you had company.com, then it basically turns into DC equals company, comma, DC equals com. That's just how it goes. I don't really want to go into a 30-minute how that's set up, but that's just the way that it is. That's a very easy thing to do, is just remember, just basically get rid of the dots in the domain. And if you had, let's say you had test.company.com, then you just do the same thing. You just add another DC equals at the beginning. So test.company.com would be DC equals test, comma, DC equals company, comma, DC equals com. Right? Cool. Password. Let's just say that we were ultra high security and we again assign the admin password of the LDAP server 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We would put that password in here. Base DN. We would come in here and say CN equals users company.com. Okay. One more thing, there might be, I don't know, I don't see it yet, so I'll go ahead and just, oh, there it is right here. Port, if your LDAP server is not running on the standard port 389, or the default port 389, then you need to come in here and uncomment port equals, and you need to change it to whatever it would be. So you might be on 1139 or 111389 or whatever. Just make sure that this matches what your LDAP server is actually running on, or it's not going to work. It's not going to connect. It's going to be on the wrong port. So I'll just leave that commented. Okay. So that's basically, this first part up here is basically just defining your server IP address, entering in credentials for a user that can bind to the LDAP server. It doesn't have to be your admin account. It's probably actually a great thing for it to not be your actual administrator account. Make it a user that can bind and do a search. That's all you need. It doesn't have to be the administrator account. And then on the base DN, again, I'm just assuming that you are using the users group as your base DN. That's going to totally depend on your actual LDAP server setup. And again, we can probably cover that in a different video. That starts to get way outside the scope of setting up FreeRADIUS. Other than, I guess I'll say, if someone else has set up the LDAP server, or you've got a pretty basic install, a clean install of maybe Open LDAP or something like that, then use an LDAP browser to connect to your LDAP server, and there's tons of free ones out there, and view the structure, view how everything is set up. And you may not have CN equals users. You may have OU equals users. It just depends on what version of, it depends on the Linux server, it depends on the LDAP server, it depends on a lot of things. And so none of them are going to be exactly the same for the most part. So just check on that and figure it out. And whatever your base DN that you want users to be searched in, just make sure you put that in there. We can keep going down, and I believe that just want to make sure that I'm showing you exactly the correct Okay. So let's go down to group membership. Okay. So remember how when we were in the users file, we said we want to check a user to see if it's a member of a certain group. Okay? We weren't necessarily just looking to see if a user was there somewhere or not. We wanted to check to see if they were actually part of a group that we wanted them to be a part of. Well, as you can see on this config file comment right here, group membership checking, disabled by default. Okay? So what that basically means is if we leave all this stuff commented out and it's not enabled, then the group checking is not going to work. And that's going to be a problem. So what we want to do is uncomment group attribute equals CN. And we also want to uncomment the group membership filter. Okay? Now, this filter, I don't know if I can stretch this. Oh, okay. Whatever. This group membership filter is going to be heavily dependent on your environment. Again, it's going to depend on your LDAP server. How I have it set up is with a Univention corporate server that runs Open LDAP. Okay, and when you install Univention corporate server and you're using its Open LDAP implementation, then this group membership filter that you see right here will not work because of the way that they have their LDAP database structured. So I had to modify some things. So I guess I can show you how to modify the group membership filter to work with Univention corporate server if you're using Open LDAP and you want to check whether someone's a member of a group in the Open LDAP server. So what we have is we change the object class from group of names to POSIX group. Okay? And again, if you have an LDAP browser and you connect to your LDAP server, you should be able to go to a user record and it should show you the information, and you should be able to see the different object classes and the different types that there are, and you should be able to sort of piece it together and say, oh, okay, like I want to see if someone's a member of this group, and so in my LDAP server it says the object class equals, you know, the POSIX group. So that's where you get this from. And if you have an LDAP browser and you connect and you just peek around for, you know, maybe just a minute or two, you'll start to see, if you look at my group membership filter, you'll start to see where I'm getting that information from and how your server might be a little bit different and how you can just substitute what your server has for the group membership filter to work. So like I said, I needed to use POSIX group, and then instead of member equals, you know, control LDAP user DM, my Univention corporate server Open LDAP implementation actually doesn't call that field member. It calls it unique member with a capital M. Okay? So again, you know, if this is wrong, if you just have member equals and it's searching and it's filtering based on that, but your LDAP server has a totally different name for that same field, it's not going to work. It's not going to automatically go, oh, I don't see member, but I see unique member, so that's probably what they're talking about. No, it has to be exactly correct. And let me see if there's anything else that I changed on this group filter, group membership filter. I don't think there was. I think that was pretty much it. Control, LDAP, user D. Yes, that's it. So, and here's the funny thing is I've seen several installs of Open LDAP, and I've seen them all do different things with the naming structure and the way things are laid out and what things are called. And so, like I said, I can't really say specifically, if you install Open LDAP, it's going to for sure be this way. Because the way that it's installed, or the package manager that installs it, or if it's a prepackaged thing, you just never know until you go into the LDAP browser and take a peek. But it's kind of a fun game, to figure this stuff out and get it all put together. The 3 lines below that, compare check items, do XLAT and XS. You can leave all those commented out. Don't need those. And that is all. Yes, that is all. So again, there's let me go over here and let you see the full, in case anyone may have something different. Oh, I'm actually glad. Hold on a second. I'm actually glad I looked at that, because I think there's more information on here that doesn't need to be there. I think I shortened it up, trimmed some things off. Object class, posit group, user, unique member. And then unique member control. Yeah. Okay, so what I did is I basically got rid of all of this so that I wish I could show you that better. Oh, that's so annoying how that's doing that. I want to edit. Okay, I see what it's doing now. Okay, so that is, yeah, that's correct. Okay, so it's what you see on this line all the way to the end. Don't, like, the $sign that's at the end is only there to let you know that there's more further. Okay, there's not an actual $sign in the line here. Okay, so there's just there's just 3 parentheses and a quote at the end. Okay, so when I use this the group membership filter that you see, I get the results that I need. I get the results that I want. It's actually checking to see if that person is a member of that group, and it's using these specific attributes to check if they're a member of that group or not. Okay, and so that's it. So we'll save, and now we're one step closer. So then we can go back to FreeRADIUS and we can say, let's just take a look. Yeah, there's nothing else. We did the users file, we did the eap.conf file, and we did the clients config file, and we did the LDAP config file inside of the modules. And so, if everything was inputted correctly, and you had the right passwords set up, and your LDAP server, you knew this, you knew the structure, then you should be ready to basically restart the FreeRADIUS server, or actually, it's not even started right now. Let's see. I don't think it's even running. Well, yeah, it actually is. I was going to say we installed it, but we never started it, but apparently it starts. So all of the configuration changes that we've made up until this point, the configuration has been made and saved to the disk, but it actually hasn't been loaded into the FreeRADIUS service. So if we made all these changes and we went to the Wi-Fi controller and we pointed it to the radius profile and got it all set up, and then we're trying it, it's not working, it's probably because the FreeRADIUS service has not been reloaded to see the changes that you've made and reload FreeRADIUS with those changes ready to go. So it's really simple to do. Service FreeRADIUS reload. Done. If you weren't the root user, you would need to do sudo service FreeRADIUS reload. Like this. Sudo service FreeRADIUS reload. That would get you the elevated permissions that you need to reload FreeRADIUS. Reloading FreeRADIUS would read all of the configuration files and bring in all your changes. And if everything was good to go, then you would see no error messages, and you would be able to go to your Wi-Fi controller, add the IP address. If you do ifconfig, you can see 192.168.1.226. You could add that IP address as a radius profile, and you could point the SSIDs to authenticate to that radius profile, and you would be good to go. Okay? So, since this video became so entirely long, I think probably what I'll do is maybe do a few different videos and say, do one for a UCS Open LDAP installation, which is pretty basic. But for those of you that have never done an install of Open LDAP or UCS before, it might be something that you might be interested in. And then once I get that set up and running, See, I could do that just as another VM, really, on this MacBook Pro, and I could just have this Ubuntu FreeRADIUS server talking to the UCS install all on the same computer. What I can't really show you is the Wi-Fi controller, and how to set that up. I could probably do some screenshots. But anyway, I guess this will be part one of many, and just let me know what other parts of the setup that you would want to see. Do you want to see an Open LDAP install and how to set that up with FreeRADIUS? Do you want to see how to do a UCS, the Univention Corporate Server install, or maybe connect it to Active Directory or do an Active Directory takeover? There's a lot of different things we can do. And if you really, really, really are interested in seeing the Wi-Fi controller get set up to, with a radius profile, and how to dynamically assign the VLANs. If you want to see how that's set up, I could probably make that happen. It would just take a little bit of work to do, but if there's enough interest, we can definitely do that. We can also do, what else was there? I feel like there was one other thing that we were gonna possibly do. Well, anyway, yes, I guess this will be, like I said, part one of many. And if you have watched this entire video, then I really appreciate you hanging out with me for this long. I don't think I intended on it being this long, but hey, you know how it goes. Oh, I know what it was now. The other thing. If you want to see how we can do either self-signed certificates for communication between FreeRADIUS and the Wi-Fi controller, the access point, the client. If you want to see how to do that, we can definitely do that. And if you want to see how to generate a CSR, a certificate sign request, and how to go to a CA, a certificate authority, and basically you upload your CSR into the certificate authority, and you pay the $100, and you get a certificate. You get a real certificate. And where that comes in handy, a lot of people are like, well, I would never pay $100 for a certificate. I think that's ridiculous. Or $400 for a wild card certificate. That's just crazy, to pay that much money per year for a certificate. Well, in a home environment or small business environment, that may not be necessary. But if you have, hundreds and hundreds of students or staff or employees, whatever, you may not impress them. You may not seem legit when they pull out their iPhone, and they see your company wireless, and they click on your SSID, and before they can even put their credentials in, they get this big, nasty, ugly warning that says, we don't trust this person. Do you? Do you know who this person is? It's going to show that they're going to be able to see that you got a self-signed certificate that expired on this date, and it was created on this date, and it was created by, radius.company.com, and it's not trusted, and it's not legit, basically. Now, all they have to do is click on, yeah, sure, and it's going to go away, but it's that initial reaction that a lot of people, especially today with security being, what it is, and hackers from all over the world being everywhere, it makes people a little uneasy, even if they just see the not verified connection error message, or not an error message, but even if they see the not verified notification, even if you have a proper certificate from an Apple recognized CA, even if you have this, even if you pay the money and you have a real certificate, they won't get the error message that says, whoa, hang on a second, we don't know who these people are. Are you sure you want to type in a sensitive username and password and give it to this server where, we don't know what the heck's going on. We don't know who this person is. You can get rid of that by paying for the certificate so that Apple can know that, yes, this is a legitimate request. These people have registered, they've paid, and we know they're legit. Even if you pay that money, once they type in their credentials, they're still going to get a pop-up message that says, are you sure you want to connect to this network? Because we don't really know what this network is. And it's not an error message. It's not even really a warning per se. It's more of just a, kind of use this network at your own risk type thing. And there's really no way to get around that unless you actually take ownership of all the Apple devices and actually push a profile or use mobile device management of some sort to push a network profile to those devices. Short of that, they're still going to get the little red letters, hey, just so you know, this isn't verified. But paying for the certificate and getting it installed and getting it working is, I would say, necessary if you want to seem legit, if your company wants to seem legit, your school, your college, your business, whatever. Because it gets a little, on a MacBook, for example, if you see the SSID and see that it's secured, before you even click on it, you see the little lock and you're going to have to enter some sort of credentials, and you're thinking in your head, I have a username and password. They told me to connect to this network and type in my username and password. Well, on a MacBook, when you click the SSID, if these certificates are not installed, or you have a self-signed certificate and you didn't pay for a real one, an authorized one, then before the user even gets prompted for their credentials, they get a really big error message that basically says, it has an exclamation point on it and shows the certificate and has all this language on it that basically says, do you really trust these people? Do you, we don't know who these people are. And you have to say, you basically have to say, yes, go ahead and trust these people. And then the other option is, no, don't connect. And that's before you even get to put in your credentials. And that's what Apple is telling you when you get that pop-up message is you're about to send sensitive data to a server that we don't really know. And then another reason, not only to get rid of that, but so if you pay for the certificate and you connect from a MacBook and you click on the SSID and your certs are all valid and everything's good to go, then the user gets prompted for username and password and they click on OK, and that is it. They don't get any error messages or anything crazy or suspicious popping up. So it makes the experience on the MacBooks or even iMacs, desktops, Mac Pros, whatever, makes the experience of connecting to Wi-Fi a little more seamless when you have a legit certificate set up. So I would say it's not really that much money to go ahead and get legitimate, and then not only that, you can warn everyone if you have a certificate. If you have a legit certificate, you can warn everyone if you get a error message that basically says, we don't know who this is. Are you sure you want to send these credentials? You can direct them and train them and teach them to make sure they don't go ahead and say yes. Because anyone could set up a rogue access point and call it the same SSID as what your network is. And they could set up one just outside of the office. They could set one up in the office. And they could be, intercepting communication from unsuspecting people. When they click on the SSID, they may be connecting to someone's rogue access point that's just logging all this information instead of connecting to your network. And so when they connect to your network and your network is presenting a valid certificate, everything will be fine. And when they're connecting to a rogue access point or a rogue server that doesn't have a signed certificate, a legit certificate, that's when they'll get the warning message. And you never really want to start training people to just start accepting things without reading. When you get this error message, just say, yes, sure, trust this person, or yes, just make it happen. Because it is extremely possible that someone could set up a rogue access point, really, really close to your, vicinity, and you may not know about it. It just depends on how your Wi-Fi system is monitoring the air and trying to take take action against those types of things. But always a good idea to be able to tell whoever's connecting to your Wi-Fi network that they need to make sure that if they get a specific error message that they don't go ahead and connect. And if you do, just give them the whole, run around with, yeah, just connect, it always says that, just whatever, then they'll never know, and you'll never know when your clients are connecting to your network or they're not. And you may not know until it's too late, until someone has already given up their credentials. And, that's the last thing you want, is someone to intercept someone's credentials, and that same username and password gets them into their email and gets them into their network resources and gets them into the print server and maybe gets them into some financial information. You could be dealing with some pretty bad, nasty stuff. And so I think it's a great idea. Do their certificates. I think I went all around the world and back to make that point, but do install legitimate certificates and just make your life happier. And so we can do a video on installing certificates. It's really not that complicated, but if you've never done it before, you might benefit from seeing someone else do it. All right, that's it.